Let me start this off right off the bat by saying I don't like Avatar. I've never fully understood the massive appeal it has to a lot of people, and I know I'm probably one of the minority in that argument where it comes to whether or not Avatar is a good series. I've had certain gripes over the years with the struggle I have with why and what makes these movies that popular. And my opinions on certain things have changed, of course. But there is one thing that I feel like not everybody talks about when it comes to how Avatar is just missing something. So, of course, we're going to talk about the newest one that just came out, Fire and Ash. And I went to go see that in theaters over the weekend. I thought it was not the greatest entry. It is, of course, what are these movies? These movies are visual spectacles. They are probably the biggest reason why anybody goes to the movie theater these days, because they take advantage of every possible filming technique and piece of equipment and technology and everything that you could push a movie to the edge to be with the technology that's out there that helps make these movies. Avatar takes advantage of that. And I remember somebody telling me around the time The Way of the Water came out, why it took James Cameron so long was because when that sequel came out in 2022, and there was this big gap between 2009 and 2022, it was because the technology hadn't caught up to what he was trying to do with the water effects. And in my honest opinion, in my honest of honest opinions, now this is a person who doesn't really like this series, but I do feel that The Way of Water is the best one. To me, something about the sequel, the original sequel in this whole series so far, out of these three movies, Way of the Water is probably the best one. And I think it's because they pushed certain limits and they told a way better story. The story for Way of the Water, to me, just hits a hell of a lot different than what the original Avatar did. Now, the original Avatar, I never liked right off the get-go. I had my various gripes with what I felt towards it, One of my biggest arguments for why I didn't like it was the same as kind of everybody else's that was happening around that time, which was like, it's just another Last of the Mohicans. It's just another Pocahontas. And then as I got older, that argument just kind of like fell flat because you can't really use that as a legitimate argument to why a movie wouldn't be good or worthwhile, because then you would have to apply that same logic to just about every other film that just takes credit from something else. What are we going to say now? Is that The Hunger Games is no good because The Hunger Games is just Battle Royale? Battle Royale is just The Running Man. The Running Man is just The Condemned. What are we saying here? Every haunted house movie can't be a haunted house movie because they're all just ripping off of the Amityville Horror or Poltergeist or something. Like, we can't have that argument because, of course, things are redone. Things are kind of reused and told in a different light. You have Romeo and Juliet, and then you have the West Side Story. It's the same friggin' story. So both of those can exist, and both of those can be great ways to tell that story, the story of romance trying to conquer all. Look at The Lion King and Hamlet. It's the same thing. It's the same story. It's just told in a different fashion to present the drama of it all. So using that as an argument to me as I've gotten older, and I probably used that as another reason why I didn't like Avatar and when I spoke about The Way of Water, because to this day I still don't like the first one. The first one has no appealing to me. I've never liked it. I don't go out of my way to watch it, and it's just the Way of Water totally outshines it in every which way possible. So now we cut 3 years after the fact, we have Fire and Ash, which was a highly anticipated sequel. Now, I was expecting the general order of things. I was expecting it to be like what the Avatar is. And for those who know what I'm saying, I'm talking about like Nickelodeon's Avatar, where he's the commander of the air, and then he first visits the Water Nation, and that's where he's discovered, and then he goes and he visits the Earth Nation, and he starts learning all all the bendings and stuff. That's what I thought this was going to do. We were in the air in the first one, then we were in the water in the second one. So Fire and Ash, maybe we're in like volcano land, maybe the ash is like a desolate wasteland that's in the middle of a war between multiple tribes or something. most of this movie was still in the fucking water. Like, I don't understand. It just feels like they just did Way of the Water again, but then just went back in the air for like 15 minutes and then came right back down, because the film starts off with just showing you more of the spectacle of what the water is. And I get it. We're picking up. We're trying to have people remember where we left off. And we get into it, and they're like, okay, we have to leave the water tribe. So they follow the hot air balloons, and they go and they start traveling, and they get attacked. And I think, okay, now we're just going to be in this desolate land with a war between two tribes, and we're getting introduced into some fire tribe or something. And yeah, there is a fire tribe, but we spend like, I don't know, literally 12 minutes, 15 minutes in the fire tribe's like land, and it's really just so the leader of the fire tribe can fall in love with the villain from every movie so far. Which, by the way, I'm gonna digress for a second. The guy's got to die, and the way this movie ends is that it just leaves it ambiguous again, just like it did with the second one and the first one. You thought he died. Like, he just got to die. There's no reason. Why are we still going after Jake Sully? Like, I get that he's a traitor, but are we really using all these resources to do that? And I know he's not the focus of the story, but it is still why the protagonist and the antagonist, Jake Sully and Colonel Coolidge, that's the whole point of their dynamic, is that he's trying to get the traitor. But the actual story is what's going on around them, and I'd just rather he would just die and we would just move away from that story altogether. Because the reason we go back into the water, because they're going after the giant whales again. It's literally how the second one ended. The second one ended exactly the same way. The fight is fantastic. The 40-minute battle at their culmination, where all the whales are there and the whales come and they try to save the day. That whole fight with all the animals and the ships and the Na'vi, the fight is fantastic. But it's the same thing. It's literally the progression is kind of different, but it leads to the same ending, which is a huge ocean battle. Like, I thought we were leaving the ocean. The fact that we were still in the ocean just it annoyed me. Like, I was expecting to not be in the water as much as I was. I thought we were going to be on land. I thought we were going to be in another part of Pandora, because they say Pandora is this huge planet that has all of this this vast, richness in its materials, and all of these tribes and the things that just come from the land and the creatures, and we're supposed to be exploring that stuff. But we're in like the same 14-mile radius. It feels like we're not going anywhere. They were in the sky, then they went to the ground, and then they found the water people, and it looks like they just went back to the same direction when they were taking them back to the other place. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, why aren't we going into another area to explore more? That just feels like a missed opportunity. And the whole fire and ash thing, the only fire and ash that has anything to do with it is that the fire tribe just is literally, like, they go against what the known religion of the planet is, where everybody talks to the mother, and the mother being the planet's kind of core and the whole system where they all can connect to and be one with the animals and the plants and the planet itself. And they go against it because they're like, the mother isn't real, you are fools. So they believe in the fire, and they take these hallucinogenics, and they follow the main leader, and she kind of is the person who is their battle torn messiah, I guess you can say. And we don't spend any time in their native land. You only really see it for literally a scene or two. Otherwise, it's all just them going after people in the woods, and then they go back to the water. And it just feels like that's just a missed opportunity to kind of get something else involved, get us out of the water, and actually do something that means fire and ash. When you said the way of water, I knew we were going to be in water for the whole movie. Now you're saying fire and ash. There's no fire. Where's the fire? You can't tell me that the fire is just them when they start burning down villages and start, like, using flamethrowers. Like, no. Like, I need a fire tribe. I need people who praise the fire. I need flames. I need volcanoes. Like, that's just such a missed opportunity to take that concept and just make it where we're exploring further into Pandora, and just utilize more of what you're trying to build as far as this world is concerned. Everything is so far happening in a very tight ecosystem. It's like we're having this whole planet in what essentially is, say, Canada. And nobody's going to Russia, and nobody's going to China, and nobody's going to Australia. You have all these lands, and we're just like, no, we're avoiding all that. We're going to stick right here. that just feels like it's lazy. Like, why not just go further? Why not just do something else? It just feels like he's taking more advantage of the special effects they can do with how they did it with the water in the second one. Now I get it that it's really good visuals, but that's the biggest gripe I have with the entirety of this series. The entire film series, they are, no matter what arguments people can have, whether the movies suck, whether the story sucks, whether they feel, one of the big arguments I usually see is that the films and the characters have no cultural impact to anything. Nobody's quoting them, nobody's dressing up as them at like Comic Cons or for Halloween. They don't have any sort of everlasting anything to them, especially when you're considering that it's now almost over a decade, at least 15 or 16 years of this being of existence. It being this apparently rich in lore and visuals, like this storyline just goes nowhere. And I get where people come from that, but I don't really have many gripes as far as that's concerned. I understand it. I understand where that argument takes place, and it does make a lot of sense. But truthfully, my biggest issue with these movies is that they are meant to be these visual wonder pieces. And they, 99% of the time, are never translatable to get that experience again once it leaves a movie theater. The amount of people that have the equipment that is capable of showing off the visual capabilities that these films, all of these films, the visual masterpieces that people claim them to be, you can't replicate. The average person in any household cannot replicate. I have a 65-inch TV in my living room. It's the only TV I have in this house. No matter what how good it looks visually, whether you have 4K or 8K, all of that, it's never the full potential of what this movie is created for. When you watch a movie that's made in like the early 2010s, when they were really trying to exploit 3D, and you watch it without the 3D, and then you see things that are flying towards the camera that were obviously like cheap camera tricks to make the 3D like feel alive, so it just doesn't make sense when there's no 3D. That's what you're going to get with this, because you're bringing this into your home, and sure, a 4K movie looks good on a 4K TV. I'm not saying that, but that's not what these films are made with. They're made with a level of technology that when you see it in theaters, and you see it on the grandest stage that it can be presented in, the 3D, the IMAX, the XD, all of these high-level quality movie theater experiences, they don't hold up outside of that. They just don't. You can't replicate it. Nobody has. That's why I say 99%, because you might have the rare person, maybe a dozen people, maybe 3 dozen people, let's say, have the ability to have the equipment capable of showing these movies in the same fashion that they're created for. So if you can't display a piece of art the way it's meant to be displayed, to me that loses value. So that's where the value gets lost with these movies with me, because they can't be replicated the way you experience them the first time you see them, because you have to see these movies in theaters. And I'm going to say that right off the bat, no matter what I say about how I feel, I'm going to see these movies every time in the movie theater, because they are spectacles. They are wonderments of what movies can possibly be. And that's sort of where they stop, because then you have to rely on having a good story. You have to rely on actually being a good movie. That's why, to me, The Way of the Water holds up. Outside of all of that fancy stuff that you can get in the theater, it still holds up as a good story. Way of Water is such a good story to me, and this just wasn't. I feel like it's such a lackluster sequel to be part of this trilogy, and I'm hoping the 4th one does a little bit better. I don't know how long I'm going to wait for that, but just to give you an idea, I just want to pull something up really quick. The reviews for Avatar, all 3 movies, on 3 web portals that I usually utilize as far as how I kind of like to see whether or not a movie is successful, or at least critically acclaimed in some capacity. As much as people might want to shit on some of these websites, they're still the ones that are out there for us to utilize, and people use them, so you have to make them part of the conversation, because if you don't, I feel like you do a disservice to being a person talking about movie reviews or things like that. So here's the first Avatar. Here's the first Avatar on Rotten Tomatoes. Okay, first Avatar, Rotten Tomatoes, 80s across the board, certified fresh. I get it. Everybody loves that movie. Again, not my favorite in the world, but that's what it looks like on Rotten Tomatoes. Here's what it looks like on Metacritic. And Metacritic is another one that people really do appreciate because it feels like it's Rotten Tomatoes with a little bit more uh, what's a good word for it? It has a little bit more reality in it, I would say, because we're not just going off of what could possibly be something that's feels faked. Metacritic has been around a little bit less than Rotten Tomatoes, but it also feels a little bit more genuine to some people. But the most genuine you'll get, which again, this is Metacritic labels this as a must see, and it's universally acclaimed and generally favorable. Okay, remember these scores because now we're going to go to Letterboxd, which Letterboxd I have been loving so much more recently. I haven't been able to add much to it, but I do have a Letterboxd account, and I just do appreciate this web portal because it actually is a good. It's literally the Facebook of movies. It's if Facebook and IMDb had a love child, so it's perfect. So now here's the 5-star ratings. 22% of all ratings for this film are 5 stars. Now granted, that's out of 54,000 ratings from fans on this website. So that the number can feel a little skewed when you think about that large number, but the movie's also been out for 16, 17 years. So of course that number is going to be a little bit higher if people are revisiting it and more people are getting their own Letterboxd accounts and adding their feelings to it. So that's the first Avatar. So now taking those numbers into consideration, we'll start with the Letterboxd Avatar Way of Water. Now, half of the reviews, something along those lines, but still holding about 17% 5-star ratings out of all of the ratings that it has. And then it's IMDb. It's Rotten Tomatoes, still certifies it fresh, but it's a little bit higher, and it's actually considered to be something that I think is called hot fresh, which I don't see a lot of movies get. And I think that's well deserved. And I believe even the Metacritic score for that is a bit lower, but still puts it in the general favorable section. So now when you compare those two, the numbers, despite not being a must-see, are still relatively similar. Now let's go to what has so far been done with Avatar Fire and Ash. We're going to go straight to the Metacritic score, and it's pretty low. Even though it's generally favorable, it's still the lowest of the three right now. And it's also the lowest of the three on Rotten Tomatoes as far as critical is concerned. Fans still kind of like it. You know, it's up there. Again, you can disagree with me. I don't think that's 100% deserved. I'm more in the line with these guys, the 66%. That's where I sit down with this film as far as I'm concerned. But what really gets me is where Letterboxd is. Now, Letterboxd might seem the same, but it's also the lowest scoring with only 14% of its 5-star reviews, which is the lowest so far on Letterboxd. And granted, it's brand new, but being brand new and having over 7,000 fans talking about it, and it just came out, it seems like that's still a good enough skew to kind of say that there are enough people who feel that there's something missing with this. And there's something that they missed. And I think that it needs to be rectified whenever the fourth one comes out. And I hope we just get that where we can go someplace else and just tie up some loose ends of some stories. And I think the biggest thing that came out of this film. Now, here's a positive I'm going to talk about. I know it took a whole 15, 20 minutes to get to a positive, but the positive about this movie is the entire storyline with Spider. What happens to Spider in this film, I think, is the most crucial piece of storytelling for the universe and the lore they're trying to back around with this movie. They have to focus on that. We have to get out of the water. We have to get away from the traitor storyline. We have to focus on this idea of Spider has now become one with the planet, and he has, as part of his body, the ability to breathe and exist on this planet like the Na'vi do. And he's even growing, I forget what the little tail that comes out of the back of their head is called, but he's growing one of those so he can now, by the end of the film, can connect with the Mother Pandora. Why is that not the focus of this whole movie? Why is it that we spent an hour for them to get into this weird fight and then spend another hour in a huge battle that's almost very similar to the battle in the last one? Why isn't that the focus of this entire film? That is so crazy to pivot in the storyline to make that be something that is possible. Because now you just open the door up to who the hell knows what's going to happen? Who the hell knows what this planet is capable of? And it's probably the best piece of lore building for this universe that they've added in all three films, in my opinion. You know, what is the Avatar? The Avatar is just them going into the bodies of the Navis. This is making them Navi. Like, it's making them part of the Earth. Or not the Earth, but like the Pandora, their Earth. It's making them part of their planet, making them one, connecting them on a level that a native-born Navi is. And we're aliens to them. That's such a missed opportunity that I swear to God, if it is a subplot in the fourth one, I'm just going to shit all over all of these movies till the rest of time. I don't care how much I love The Way of Water. If it's not the primary story in that fourth film, I'm boycotting everything, because that's ridiculous. That needs to be the forefront of the Avatar film moving forward. It needs to be what we're talking about. If they're not going to kill off the character and end the idea of it being a thing where they can study it altogether, make it the main story. Get off of this other nonsense. Make that be what we as the audience are going to focus on, because we want to see that to its fruition. At least I do. I don't know if maybe you took something else away from this film, but that's the number one thing I took away from it, is that the best thing out of it is the entire storyline with Spider. What happens to his character is going to be crucial to the rest of this series, and I hope, truly, for the majority of all of its diehard fans, I hope it lives up to it, for all of you to continue with it, and for me to continue with it as well. That's my heart of heart feelings, is that they might screw this up a lot, but we won't know. And based on this track record, we're probably not going to know till 2029. Jesus Christ.